The start of a year for movies is kind of an interesting predicament because sometimes it's hard to figure out what exactly there is to talk about. The Oscars just happened of the previous year. There's not much going on in the world of film up until the summer whenever all the blockbusters come out. And then after that is award season where things start to get fun again. Let's look into the future. Because look, my favorite time of the year is festival season 100%. I fantasize about going back to TIFF. That is where I thrive as a film fan. And now I'm looking into the future to see what movies could break out of those festivals or even just in the fall season or right now. These are my predictions of the movies that will be nominated for Best Picture in 2025. My first pick is Marty Supreme. This is going to be the new film by Josh Safdie, half of the Safdie brothers. If you guys don't know, the Safdie brothers are a very, very successful duo of directors, kind of slated as our new Coen brothers per se. They've directed two pretty prominent movies, Good Time and Uncut Gems, but the duo has split because they want to do more solo directing projects. And Josh Safdie is doing a film that is a sports it's a sports dramatic comedy that's supposed to have a similar vein to something like Catch Me If You Can or The Wolf of Wall Street, from what I've heard, starring Timothy Chalamet. And it's being produced by A24 and it's coming out on Christmas Day. This is a recipe for Best Picture. This movie would have to be awful to not get into Best Picture. For me, this screams Oscar bait, but in the best way possible. Not like the derogatory way of saying Oscar bait. Like, I'm super excited for this movie. I think it'll be stellar. I am a fan of the Safdie brothers, despite my negative review of Uncut Gems that kind of got me popular on Letterboxd back in the day. But I respect them as talented artists and filmmakers, and I think they know exactly what they're doing, even if I'm not entirely on their wavelength at all times. But this definitely feels something to me like I'll resonate with. Marty Supreme also kind of has shades of Forrest Gump, in my opinion, which some people might think is bizarre, noting it's a Safdie brothers movie, or I guess one half of the Safdie brothers per se. But I'm talking about like how I feel like it's going to be like this 2.5 hour epic about a man's life and him kind of like swindling. It's about a ping pong player. I mean, so I guess you can make that connection as well, you know? Benny Safdie from the Safdie brothers is also releasing a movie this year called The Smashing Machine, which is a wrestling film. Kind of reminds me of The Iron Claw that's going to star Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Some people also have The Smashing Machine on their predictions for early Oscar Best Picture contenders. I don't really see that one as much. I feel like it's going to be a much grittier, much smaller film. While Marty Supreme's going to be like the big, epic, totemic Oscar play. That being said, I do think there is a good chance for Dwayne The Rock Johnson to pick up his first nomination if The Smashing Machine really is a tour de force, which would be really interesting. Timothy Chalamet v. Dwayne The Rock Johnson acting extravaganza, I guess. That would be crazy. I mean, that'd be a crazy predicament to happen this award season, but it's looking likely. I do think that if this movie is a huge deal, we will see Timothy Chalamet get his first Oscar. Weirdly enough, even with how young he is, he already almost seems overdue. I think if we look back at this decade of movies, he's going to be kind of the superstar of this decade. You know, he definitely feels like this generation's Brad Pitt, or this generation's George Clooney, or this generation's Leonardo DiCaprio. So I do think he will get that win if this movie ends up being as big as we expect it to be. Next up on this list, we have One Battle or Another, which is a pending title, but we'll see if that's what they go with. This is the newest film from Paul Thomas Anderson, based on the Thomas Python novel. If you guys don't know who Thomas Python is, he is a pretty divisive author. He wrote the book Gravity's Rainbow. If you know anything about that, you know, oh, yeah, those could be dense. So Paul Thomas Anderson is not unfamiliar with his work. He adapted one of his books and made Inherent Vice. And the reason why that has some people being more trepidatious when predicting this new movie is Inherent Vice is probably PTA's most divisive film to date. That movie wasn't universally loved, even though it does definitely have a cult status of people who appreciate it now. But upon release, people were kind of like, did PTA miss on this one, you know? And One Battle or Another is by far and away his biggest movie to date. This movie is budgeted at $120 million. And PTA in the past has been a very, very independent filmmaker. So this is kind of going to be a big swing for him. It's getting that wide distribution in August. Look, this is a recipe to lose money in theaters. I really do not think this movie will do great in its theatrical run, especially because it's supposed to be kind of weird and off-kilter. I don't know. I don't know exactly what this movie is doing, but I'm so intrigued. I don't even know what's going to feel like, to be honest with you. And that's kind of exciting. But I don't think you can ever doubt Paul Thomas Anderson. That's why I have this movie so high on this list. Paul Thomas Anderson is one of the most respected directors currently working and will continue to be one of the most respected directors of all time going forward. He's your favorite director's favorite director. That's kind of the lane that he's been in a long time. You know, he doesn't have like the name recognition of a Christopher Nolan or Quentin Tarantino or Steven Spielberg, but people consider him on that level, especially when they recount his filmography. And the Academy is his biggest fan. Even when other award shows have been more lukewarm to his films, he has done well at the Academy. That movie I just mentioned, Inherent Vice, a very divisive movie, was not liked for audiences whatsoever. Had a little bit of a critic appraisal, but not even, they weren't going for bat for it. It still got a Best Adapted Screenplay nomination at the Oscars. Phantom Thread, which did nothing, not much of anything during award season, randomly popped up in 2017 Oscar morning with a Best Picture nominee, a Best Director, and acting and writing. It had a really good day. Even Licorice Pizza, a movie I really enjoyed, but a lot of people kind of had some issues with, still ended up getting 3 nominations. The man just is respected by the guilds. Point blank, period. It will show up this award season in some capacity, even if it's a bomb. And I do think that if the movie is a box office disaster, for someone like PTA, they actually might see that as a point of respect. They might see that as a, wow, he really took the studio's money and made the weird movie he wanted to make with it, you know? If the movie gets the divisive critical reception that something like Babylon did a few years ago, then I'll question it being a big Oscar play. But I will say this, if this movie is universally acclaimed, but not only that, if this movie ended up actually being a box office hit and success, watch out for this thing winning the entire award season. Like, that would be a huge deal. Next off, we got one that's pretty easy to guess. That is going to be Wicked for Good. The first Wicked, 10 plus nominations, widely acclaimed, made $1 billion. I mean, just a phenomenon. It was maybe the film phenomenon of last year. Wicked for Good could go 2 ways. One, it could go the way of Dune Part 2, where the Academy still recognizes it in picture, gives it a few texts, but kind of is like, you know what, we gave you your day in the sun last time. We're just going to acknowledge that you did a good job ending it. Or it could go way of Return of the King, where they go, man, they really concluded Wicked well. Because look, the Part 2 of Wicked is better than Part 1. Like the original Broadway show, I like the second part of Wicked more than I like the first part, for sure. It's darker, it's more intriguing, there's more meat to it, there's more weight to it. For Good is my favorite song in Wicked, and it has not even been performed yet. And that song's going to have people weeping in theaters. Weeping. And it also has, I think, two new original songs. So those will get song nominations, and one of those songs will win. That's an already guaranteed win for the Oscars for next year. That would be crazy if that didn't happen. So we got two songs getting nominated for Best Original Song. Some of these texts coming back. If you guys have seen the original Wicked musical, you do know that the prince's role is significantly meatier within part two, which means we could see a Jonathan Bailey supporting actor nomination as well. If this movie ends up scoring 12 nominations, Oscar morning, watch out for this thing winning Best Picture. Like, I think it might be a done deal at that point. And there's a path for it. I just don't know yet if they're going to fully embrace it or calm down to it. They already showered it with love this year. We'll see. My fourth choice for picture is The Life of Chuck, a new Neon film. Neon recently got Nora Best Picture, and it got Parasite Best Picture just 5 years ago. So when they are releasing a movie, you got to pay attention to it. Look, Neon was probably going to try to buy the Cannes winner this year because they do every single year and campaign that. Unless that movie is as weird as Titan, we'll see. So there's a question there. Can Neon get two movies into Best Picture? Yeah, they got a win for Nora and Parasite. They can get two movies Best Picture nominees. That's not even a doubt in my mind. That studio is one of the most powerful independent movie studios ever. I mean, ever. They're on the scale of A24, if not bigger at this point. So I have no doubt in my mind they can get two movies a good campaign. The Life of Chuck, if you guys don't know, is a new Mike Flanagan film adapted from a Stephen King short story that won People's Choice at TIFF. People's Choice at TIFF has predicted nominees for Best Picture over and over and over again. It has a track record of over 10 years at this point. And every year, it seems like something wins, and people are like, oh, this is going to be the year where it breaks. This is going to be the year that breaks. This is going to be the year. You know, people were very much that way whenever American Fiction Surprise won TIFF. People are like, okay, well, that was a weird choice, but there's no way that thing's getting nominated for Best Picture. It wins Screenplay Oscar night. The People's Choice TIFF Award is too powerful to ignore. Now, I think that Neon saved this movie for this year because, you know, they already had a Nora and they were getting that thing to Best Picture. It is a weird choice in my opinion. I do think that if The Life of Chuck came out this last year, it would have easily gone into picture. But I don't think that means that it doesn't get into picture this year. I don't think that means it actually has a shot of winning picture this year. I mentioned Forrest Gump in my Marty Supreme prediction, but that can also be applied to The Life of Chuck. It's a very life-affirming film. It's big and it's grand, and it's going to make you leave the theater feeling like you are floating and feeling like life is good and life is precious. And I think in our divisive times right now, that's going to be something that people actually really do attach to, and it could be a statement that a movie wins that's kind of about radical empathy. I saw the movie at TIFF. I think it's adorable and sweet and kind-hearted, and it feels like Coda to me. And that's what I can say about it. I would be shocked if it didn't become a picture thing. I certainly think it's got a shot at winning adapted screenplay, and I certainly think it's going to gain an audience of people who absolutely love it and claim it as their own. It's also going to regain an audience of people who hate it and think it's the Oscar villain of the season and that it's sentimental schmark. And I'm not in either one of those camps. I think it's a good movie. I don't think it should win Best Picture, but I think it's a good movie, and I really do think it will get nominated. My next choice is absolutely going to be my Oscar villain of this year. I guess if it comes out, there's been some rumors that it could get delayed, but from all we know, the Michael Jackson biopic Michael is coming out this year. Please no. Please no. Please not again. Okay. You guys don't know, a few years ago, this movie Bohemian Rhapsody came out. It's terrible. It's one of the worst movies I've ever seen. It's an awful film. It won like 6 Oscars for some reason, including editing, even though it's one of the worst edited things I've ever seen in my life. Because people like Queen, I guess, even though that movie is a terrible retelling of the story of Queen. I like Queen too. Cool. That's great. Look, a Michael Jackson biopic by design is horrific. Because Michael Jackson, I don't know if you guys knew this, but he's kind of a man who's shredded in some controversy over the years. And you kind of have to address that in order to make an accurate depiction of Michael Jackson. But his estate owns all of his music. So you can't actually make a compelling story about the life of Michael Jackson and get into some of the issues he had as a human being. You're going to have to get a fluff piece no matter what. And from what initial reports were saying, there was actually a plot point of this film that was showing him as the victim in that whole Finding Neverland situation. I kid you not. Until they realized they actually did not have the rights to portray those people in the film. And they're having to reshoot it. Yeah. Is this going to matter to the Academy? Absolutely not. It's a musical biopic about the king of pop music. This man is so recognizable to so many people. It will make $1 billion when it comes out. We'll all see it. It'll be the talk of the town for a long time, and it'll get nominated for 10 plus Oscars. He could even win. The guy playing Michael, I wouldn't surprise me whatsoever. And it's going to give me a headache, guys. It's going to give me a headache. Get delayed. Get delayed till next year. I don't want to have to think about you until next year, please. Next movie on my list is After the Hunt. After the Hunt is the new film from Luca Guadagnino. If you guys don't know who that guy is, his big Oscar film came out with Call Me By Your Name in 2017. That was actually the big breakout performance for Timothée Chalamet. And he's continued to make movies that I guess haven't appealed quite to the Academy senses. So last year, he made 2 movies. Queer and Challengers. Both good movies. Both kind of in conversation for award season. And both receiving 0 nominations Oscar morning. And people thought Challengers would sneak in there at least somewhere. Like score, screenplay, just anything. Any surprise nominations. But nothing. It was shut out. And it's interesting because that was probably one of the most acclaimed and biggest movies of last year. I think After the Hunt could be a really big deal. It's a movie about a college accusation scandal. To keep it brief, that's kind of what I've gotten from the premise. And it feels something that's a lot more Academy Award bait than some of Luca's previous works, but it seems like his acclaim for his other movies could push him to do this and become an Oscar player again. I also think that performances by Julia Roberts and Andrew Garfield could get attention this award season as well. My number 7 is Hamnet. This is the newest film from Chloe Zhao. Chloe Zhao, if you don't know, is the director of everyone's favorite Marvel movie, The Eternals, and Nomadland. I actually really like both of those movies, especially Nomadland, but I'm an Eternals defender. But she's going back to making an Oscar type of film with Hamnet. Hamnet is a book that's a fictional depiction of William Shakespeare and him growing up in his adolescence. It's based off of a widely acclaimed book, and again, all of that screams Oscar to me, especially somebody coming back after winning Best Picture and making something with that type of source material. I think the pieces are coming together for sure. My next pick is Sentimental Value. That's the new Håkon Trier film. He is a Norwegian director who most recently made The Worst Person in the World. The Worst Person in the World had a screenplay nomination and a foreign film nomination and nothing else, but it was a widely acclaimed film that people still hold on to and still love. What we'll see sometimes, especially in the Academy, is someone who is a foreign director who has gotten a lot of acclaim and buzz, especially within the States, kind of build to them having their Oscar moment. And sentimental value definitely feels like it could be that for him, especially if it wins the Palme d'Or and gets picked up by Neon. I This would be a good case to predict it for picture. Now I got some oddball picks with these bottom two. I've got some. These are definite Brett picks, but I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna try something here. Mother Mary is the newest film by David Lowery. David Lowery is one of my favorite filmmakers working right now. A Ghost Story is absolutely beautiful. The Green Knight's one of my favorite movies of the last 10 years. I love Pete's Dragon, his Disney remake. It's a beautiful film. Mother Mary is his take on pop music. He has stated it might be his weirdest film yet, but that is not really a thing with the Academy anymore. They will nominate The Substance. They will give Everything Everywhere All at Once Best Picture. I'm really excited for this film, and I think that David Lowery is one of these directors that has been building up his resume to the point where we could see this actually happen. And for this movie to catch steam, I think it would have to catch on in the cultural conversation in a big way, but since it is about pop music, Jack Antonoff is helping produce the music on it, and Charlie XCX is involved. I don't know, not a ton of people have this on their list, but hey, if I predicted this correctly, I'll get bragging points for the rest of the year. And if I get number 10 right, I will definitely get bragging points Oscar season. For my number 10 slot, I'm putting in James Gunn's Superman, which I know a lot of people are like, whoa, okay. For me, James Gunn is one of these filmmakers who absolutely is on the level of an auteur filmmaker, but he's just been working in the scene of comic book movies, which is fine. But like the Guardians movies and the Suicide Squad have deeper themes to them than people will kind of acknowledge within the first watch, because James Gunn is an excellent storyteller. And I think it's going to be no different with Superman. I think Superman's going to be a great movie. This movie's also going to be huge for the cultural zeitgeist. It is the start of the DC universe. But I also think since Superman is a symbol of hope, peace, justice, goodwill, he's a Boy Scout, that is something that is going to attract the culture. Again, in a time where we really need Boy Scouts, where we really need heroes, where we really just need good people wanting to do the right thing for the right reason. I think that's why Superman's going to resonate when it comes out. That's why I think if Superman's a billion-dollar movie, if it has the universal acclaim that it needs, and it ends up being a talking point for the further context of the way that we should treat one another, it could actually pave its way to Best Picture in a similar way that like Top Gun Maverick or Barbie did. I'm just calling it right now. I could be totally wrong on this. It is a 10 slot for a reason. Now let's talk about some future potential candidates that I left off of this list that might look dumb that I left off this time next year. Die My Love is the new Lynn Ramsey film. You know, Lynn Ramsey's been working in Hollywood for a long time, making these acclaimed little movies. It might be her time to finally get recognition from the Oscars. Robert Pattinson is supposed to be doing a pretty interesting role here that could get him a nomination. I don't know yet. I would have to see how this does at Cannes in order for me to really, or if it even goes, I think it's going to Cannes. But anyways, I'd have to see how this movie does reception-wise for me to consider it more heavily. But it's kind of in the back of my head. Kind of the big one people probably think I'm forgetting. And I'm like, no, I know. Avatar Fire and Ash, I don't think is going to get nominated for Best Picture. Here's why. So the first Avatar, huge cultural juggernaut, gets nominated for a bunch of stuff. Avatar 2 comes out, 15 years later or something like that, and gets nominated for Best Picture. Does not have the same push that the first Avatar has. It just doesn't. At the Academy, it picks up a few nominations. I believe it snuck into Best Picture. It's like a 9 or a 10 slot. I really do. And that movie is a billion-dollar movie. It was huge when it came out because people were so interested to see what they were doing for 15 years. The gap between this movie and Avatar 3 is not nearly that long. So I don't think that pent-up interest is going to help this movie in award season whatsoever. We already know what this is. And so for me, it's kind of like, are we going to nominate every Star Wars movie? You know, like that's kind of where we're at now, where it's like, I don't know. Like, I don't think we're going to nominate every Avatar movie. that comes out. That doesn't make sense. I don't see a world where every time Avatar releases like a new movie, like Avatar 6 or 7, we're like, okay, we got to save a spot for them for picture, I guess. That just doesn't make sense to me. So I don't think this is going to get into picture, but I could be wrong. Maybe James Cameron's just that powerful of a filmmaker. We'll see. I just think it would have to be distinctly and drastically different from the first two. Frankenstein is one of my most anticipated movies of the year by Del Toro. Look, Del Toro's won Best Picture with The Shape of Water before. He is beloved by the Academy. I mean, Nightmare Alley got nominated for Best Picture, and that movie is considered probably like in the middle of his filmography. And they still just, I don't know, they love that thing, you know? So, Frankenstein is probably a lock for some categories. Cinematography, editing, maybe. Even a performance, depending on how good the Frankenstein role is. But for me, I'm not betting on this getting picture yet because it is a remake of a classic monster movie. I don't know if that's something that the Academy is going to entirely go for. You know, a lot of us kind of tried to predict Pinocchio getting picture there for a second, like the animated one he made a few years ago. And it really didn't. It did well animated film-wise. I mean, it won Best Animated Film of the Year, but, like, it could have done more. So I don't think the Academy's just always going to push Del Toro for whatever he makes. A movie that a lot of people have pretty high on their list that makes me confused is Begonia, which is the new Yorgos Lanthimos movie. Yorgos Lanthimos is fresh off of, I guess, Kinds of Kindness, but that's kind of a side project. Kinds of Kindness came out last year. I don't like that movie. Most people don't like that movie. But you know what? It's Yorgos being silly and weird and his whole thing over again. His big movie was Poor Things. Here's what I'll say. When Poor Things was in development, I told people I don't know if the Academy would be that radical to nominate that movie for many awards. And that movie was probably number 2 to win picture after Oppenheimer last year. I mean, that movie was colossal. So, I get that maybe I'm making the same mistake again. But Begonia is based off of a really, really trippy Korean film that is very, very scary and very weird and just not something I think is Academy friendly. And Yorgos is going to keep to that weird original tone. For me, Begonia is just like, I think people are going to walk out of that movie feeling bad about themselves. And something like a Poor Things, as weird and disjointed and kind of gross that movie can be at times, you walk out of that movie with a feeling of life affirmness. You know, a lot of people have talked about how the Academy is embracing more trippy, cerebral, weird movies now, like Everything Everywhere All at Once and Poor Things and The Substance. But all these movies kind of have a connective tissue, which is they comment on the broader scope of the human connection in general. They aren't just necessarily broad satire, but they're about people and they're about humanity and they're about issues that we all face. And Begonia could end up being that, but I don't have the evidence from the original source material that it's going to be that whatsoever. Deliver Me From Nowhere is the new Bruce Springsteen biopic with Jeremy Allen White playing Bruce Springsteen. Now, you know, a complete unknown completely killed it last season. I mean, and I kind of was like, nah, maybe that's the one they don't go for. Nah, it did really well. That movie's also really good. I actually think Deliver Me From Nowhere sounds way better and way more interesting to me than Michael. But unfortunately, I think if Michael comes out, that's going to take away all of the momentum for Deliver Me From Nowhere. I think that movie needs to move. I think if that movie moves to another year, maybe then I'd be more inclined to say that it could be a picture contender. But I think Michael's going to take all the air out of the room when it comes to music biopic discourse. Wes Anderson is releasing a movie called The Phoenician Scheme. This is actually on my radar. This might be 12 or 13 for picture for me. A lot of people are sleeping on it right now. Now, Wes Anderson did a great job for award season with the Grand Budapest Hotel and has never made a huge outing at the Academy Awards since. Here's the thing. Wes Anderson doesn't make Academy-friendly movies whatsoever. Isle of Dogs, French Dispatch, and Asteroid City, huge ensembles where it's hard to pinpoint one person for performance. really interesting, weird, quirky screenplays where they might try to go for something that's a little more dramatic. You know, he's not really in the game to get nominated for awards. This movie seems to be more of a grounded heist movie that might have more central performances, including one by Benicio del Toro. That could be an interesting thing for them to go for. Just saying. And those are some of my predictions for Best Picture this Academy Awards season. If you want to know what's going on in everything, which is film, music, literature, my own projects, yada, 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 I'm just going to talk about whatever I want on this channel. Make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.